Hey there, this is Jacques from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Magic the Gathering. So we had a lot of interesting topics that came up over the past week and a half or so. We didn't have an episode last week due to all the spoilers coming out, so I wanted to take this time to talk about some of the interesting controversial topics that have come up. We'll touch a little bit on the wrap-up of the bannings from the leaks. We'll talk about the Proxies and Wizards' communication with the community. We'll talk about the Splinter twin banning and also a new promo card potentially. I wanted to do question and answer in this episode, but there's so many topics I don't think I'm going to have time, so I will try to do that next week. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them in the next episode. I already have a couple that are outstanding. So having said that, let's jump into Proxies first. So Magic Online Beta, it has been spoiling stuff left and right. So a funny story, a few days back people figured out going into Magic Online Beta that Splinter Twin and Summer Bloom were banned in Modern before the official announcement came out, and now people have found this promo card of Abrupt Decay in there. Now here's the thing, the symbol on it is the Magic Online promo symbol, so it doesn't mean you're going to see a paper release of this necessarily. This could just be a Magic Online promo card that happens. There are a number of those out there if you don't play a lot of MTGO. However, a lot of times it's a precursor for a promo card that will end up as a Judge's promo or Friday Night Magic promo, or even in a From the Vault, they'll use this art, that type of thing. So this is maybe a sneak preview of something coming in the future. The art's really interesting and the flavor text is really cool. So just wanted to show that to you guys so you saw it, but who knows if we'll see it in paper or not in the future. Next, let's talk a little bit about how the judges and leak situation drama worked itself out. As always, I'll have links to all the pages we look at on here, but first off, quickly, the last episode of This Week in Magic the Gathering aired right when the information was coming out that people were being banned for leaks. So we talked a little bit about it, but honestly we didn't have all the facts at that point. Now we know a lot more, so I just want to kind of like go over at least the ending of the story for you guys. Long story short, of course, the original leak, which was Kozilek and Waste for Oath of the Gatewatch, comes out, and what we know now that happened was there was somebody from Wizards that shared those cards with somebody in the community who had a Facebook page. This Facebook page and the group within had shared this type of information in the past with each other. I don't know if it's been leaked in the past or if it's just been shared, but this time these two cards got shared in that Facebook group. Somebody from that group shared it with Roberto from Magic the Gathering Focus Podcast, which you see on your screen here. You can check in the description below for the link. And he saw this card, didn't know what it was or if it was even real, and put it out there on Twitter. And the world, of course, went ablaze. So here's the thing. Kind of knowing now what we know, I do feel bad for anyone that was banned in this situation. It did feel very awkward. Roberto got a 3-year ban. Somebody else, I think, got a 2-year ban. And then there were a number of people that were just in the Facebook group that got a ban. Originally, the concept was people thought that they were banned because they weren't telling on the people that leaked the card to Wizards, but that really wasn't the case. What it was Wizards banned these people because they knew that this was a repeated thing, that they've shared this confidential information amongst each other before and nobody had come forward. In hindsight, Wizards figured out that that may be a little too harsh, so we're going to look at that in just a few moments. But before we get there, I just want to point out, shortly after this happened, Helen Bergeau went on Roberto's podcast, and if you haven't listened to it, check it out. I have the link here. It's a very interesting to hear, and kudos to Roberto, who did a really amazing job, very professional talking to her, especially right after getting banned and being part of this. And he kind of talked through the whole situation in a very objective way with her, and very polite. They both were. So very amazing on both their parts that he was able to handle it as professionally as he did, and then she was able to go on and felt safe enough to go on and talk with him about it. Really awesome by both parties. So I thought that was really cool. Now, having said that, good news is this article came out on January 13th by Elaine Chase, and she it really framed everything up very well. Again, you can check this out in the description below. I'll leave a link so you can read the whole thing. As you can see, it's pretty long. But long story short, what she says is that things weren't as simple as maybe they were perceived, and they realized that this hurt the community. So the people that were banned for, I guess, being kind of the innocent bystanders, or 12 of them that got bannings for a few months, 10 of them appealed, and they did end their suspension and reinstate them. The last 2 that didn't appeal, they kind of reached out to them and say, hey, go ahead and appeal because we'll probably reinstate you. And they went on to say they realized that they were a big part of the problem. Now, a couple episodes ago, I talked about that and really talked about how Wizards should have handled the message. Well, this is exactly what I was talking about. This was a much better message. Very well framed, much better than Trick Jarrett's message that he sent out, which was very scathing and very unprofessional in my opinion. This was incredible and did a really fine job summing everything up, and I'm glad to hear that those people that were involved are reinstated, or at least a good number of them. So that was good news. Now, they go on to say, which is pretty cool, that they do realize that part of the problem was they don't communicate when or where these spoilers are going to happen. So people see a card and they make assumptions. They assume it's either fake and, hey, look at this fake card, or they assume, oh, this is already spoiled. If I'm seeing it, well, I'm sure it's somewhere, so let me just put it out there and show more people. And that might not always be the case. So a lot of people who see a card that they don't necessarily go and say, I'm going to go look at every website and message board and see if it's out there. They just see it and assume it's out there. If it got to me, I'm sure it got to a whole lot of other people, so let me throw it out there. So what they're asking is to be more careful. If you do see something you haven't seen before, take a moment to do the research and contact them to say, hey, is it okay to share this? And then they'll let you know if it is or isn't. And I think that's fair, because leaks are bad. You don't want them getting out there, because it does hurt business and it hurts the community. It hurts other news outlets or YouTubers. Or this would have been their exclusive preview card and so on and so forth. So I think that's good. Aside from that, they're going to be a lot more transparent about when and how they are doing spoilers, which again is good, because right now we have spoiler week. We think we know when it's going to start. Sometimes it starts early. Sometimes they'll just show something. Then you have those weird situations where people open a pack of Magic Origins and they get a Oath of the Gatewatch card in there. And is that okay to show? Is that not okay to show? Like, there's all this strange stuff that happens, and people just don't know what is okay and what's not okay. So they are going to be a lot more transparent about, hey, this is spoiler season. This is when we're releasing this. If you watch this Grand Prix, we're going to talk about this. And that's awesome. I think that's phenomenal for being just more transparent, having better communication with the community. Even helps people like me, who basically every day I look at a bunch of sites to make sure there's no new information to share with you guys. I watch every GP because they may all of a sudden decide they're going to show a card or something, so it's awesome. It just makes it a lot easier, and kudos to her for putting this out. This was phenomenal. Definitely read this when you get a chance. It's definitely a step in the right direction, and it's a good thing. So having said that, everything was all well and good for a few days, and then Proxygate started. Where did this start? And let me give you a little bit of background on this one. So back in the old days when I used to play Magic, when there weren't a whole lot of Magic cards around, and cards were just starting to increase in value. Moxes were maybe going for about $25. Lotus was getting up there on $80, $100. And a lot of people didn't want to play with the cards and shuffle them. And sleeves weren't like a huge thing back then either. A lot of people just didn't even think about using sleeves. So at the time, the rule was that you could use a proxy, but you had to have the actual card with you and show that you had it. So it was kind of funny, because a lot of people in those days used to take like a Plains card and write Black Lotus on it in black marker, put it in their deck, and then when they drew it and played it, it's kind of like a checklist card. They put it out, take it off to the side, and then they go in their bag and pull out this huge piece of plastic that their Black Lotus was encased in and throw it on the table and like play with this huge giant honking thing on the table, which cracked me up. But yeah, people did that with their Moxes. It was kind of funny. So quickly, people, I think, realized that probably wasn't the best way to go, and eventually Wizards did go ahead and say, okay, in sanctioned tournaments, you have to play with the rail cards. It wasn't such a huge deal, because at that time when they did that, extended was a thing, standard was a thing now, so you didn't feel like you necessarily had to play like Legacy, Vintage, or anything like that. So okay, if I was really worried about the condition of my cards, I can just play standard or play extended or something else, or play other casual formats. So that's kind of just the way things have been. However, there is a strong community, especially in the Northeast. You see a lot of this, and I assume maybe in the Northwest. But New York City, I think the Boston area had a lot of this that still goes on to this day. Proxy tournaments, and basically what they do is they say, we're going to play vintage, but you can proxy up to 10 cards. So up to 10 cards you don't have to own. You can put in your vintage deck. And this is a good way for people who don't own the Power 9 or maybe like a Library of Alexandria to be able to play vintage. Now, there's still incentive to actually own the cards, because if I own, say, 2 Moxes, that opens up 2 more of my proxies for something else. So it's kind of an interesting format. It's a way for communities to continue to be able to play vintage, even if there's not a lot of people in the community that can get a hold of the cards and actually put together a deck. So it's interesting. Now, these are never sanctioned tournaments. These are always unsanctioned, and stores run them, and they do their own prizes and what have you. And there's, a community that is very involved in that. It might be a little smaller than it used to be, but there is a small community that does that. Well, one of those stores put out a statement on their Facebook page one day saying that they've talked to Wizards of the Coast. They've been asked not to do these even as unsanctioned tournaments, so starting now we're not going to hold these anymore, and so on and so forth. Well, that of course caused an uproar with the community. Like, why does Wizards care about this? And here's where things started to really kind of go off the rails. Our poor guy tricked Jarrett again. I feel bad for this guy because I think he gets caught in the middle. I'll talk more about that later. But he did a posting on Reddit. I'll leave a link again in the description. And that's what we're looking at here. As you can see, he's since deleted it, and he said he deleted it because the official statement came out, which we'll also look at in just a moment. But here's where things got kind of bad. So it sounds like what happened was, I think Schrick went to maybe the legal department and said, okay, what's the message point here? Or at least maybe went to maybe his leader in the company. But it sounds like he went to somebody and said, what am I supposed to tell the community about this? And he got kind of the letter of the law, counterfeit cards, blah, 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 blah. And that's what he came back with. And the way it comes off is definitely very, very offensive maybe to people that are in that community that are not involved in any sort of counterfeiting, obviously, or anything like that. There's no clear distinction in his article about counterfeiting and proxies. He kind of equates the two, which I'm sure legally, if you talk to the legal department of Hasbro, they probably equate the two. But your community manager needs to be a little softer with this message and a little more thoughtful. And unfortunately, it came off in a not so positive way. So, things like counterfeit cards are prohibited in sanctioned events. People are on board with that. We have started to ask stores not to organize unsanctioned events with counterfeit cards. Now, the people involved in that, I don't think would consider, nor would I consider what they're doing counterfeit cards. 99% of the time, a proxy is writing Black Lotus on a land card with a marker. That's usually what a proxy is. Now, there's some people that are really into that community that want to use something that looks a little more realistic, and maybe they print something on sticker paper, stick it on the land. Yeah, sure, absolutely. I used to see it even in the early days of Magic, when the technology wasn't as easy to pull off. But I get there's some issue with that, because if people do that, there is eventually that person that's going to try to pull one over on somebody and pass it off as real, even though you're going to be able to tell if you look closely at it, what you're looking for, especially if it's a sticker card. You should be able to figure it out. But online, you might not be able to see that, or they might not actually show you the picture of the real card, and there's people that could take this as a reason to kind of scam some folks. Or we've seen it, those eBay auctions that do come out and say this isn't real, it's a proxy, but they set the reserve as if it's real, and people don't read it and they just assume it's real and buy it even though it's not. So these things are bad. They're bad for Magic, they're bad for the community. They need to stop that, but that's not what this is about. Counterfeiting and playing in a proxy tournament are not the same thing. Counterfeiting is people that are printing these cards in quantities. Those are the people that are really the bad guys out there that they need to go after, not these stores. I get why they wouldn't support this in a sanctioned format, and I get why they wouldn't be so super excited about it happening in a store, but at the same time, to go in and physically start asking stores to stop starts to feel a little weird to me, and here's why. The Wizard Play Network is a very unusual thing. It's not illegal, to my knowledge anyway. It's not like a monopoly or anything, but I feel like it's a little, I don't know, it doesn't feel good to me. And what I mean by that, not the whole network, but just the fact that they can come out and say, okay, you've earned the right to do a pre-release, or you've earned a right to get X amount of pre-release kits, or you've earned the right to be able to sell X amount of from the vault product. I don't know. I know Wizards is the only company that does something like this. I mean, there's incentives for stores. If they really market their product well, they could get more of it. They could get more of something, or at a better cost, or what have you. This is a thing. It's part of business. But it gets awkward when you have Wizards calling a store. And even if they're not outright threatening, they call and they start asking a lot of questions about your tournaments and about counterfeit cards and about what's going on in your store. And if I'm a store owner, even if they don't come out and say this could affect my status, I'm going to worry that it could affect my status. And at the end of the day, even if I don't think that's right, I got my business to think about, and maybe it's just easier to not do those tournaments. Maybe I don't have the money to pay a lawyer to fight this, so you know what? I'm just going to have to deal with it, and we're not going to do proxy tournaments anymore because I don't need Wizards calling me, asking me 1,000 questions, and at least on the underline, maybe making me feel like I could lose my pre-release, or I could lose my from the vault product, or what have you. That's where it gets icky to me. That just does not feel good. It doesn't feel like a good business practice. And again, I don't think Wizards has come out and threatened anybody with that, but when you get a call from lawyers or from representatives that are definitely asking you questions about counterfeiting and legal issues, it's going to jar you a little bit. It's going to worry you as a business owner, and that's not great in my opinion. So that's kind of how this all started. Now, again, kudos. And I'll leave a link to this below as well. Kudos again to Elaine Chase. Elaine Chase has just been putting out a lot of great information. Good for her. She tried to clarify this up a little bit and really said there is a difference between proxies and counterfeiting. And it doesn't mean just because you're playing in a proxy tournament that something bad's happening or you're doing something unsavory. We do ask stores not to participate in that because of some of the far-reaching repercussions of what that could mean. Somebody could eventually maybe buy a collection, for example, and they get a proxy card and don't know it's a proxy card. There's these weird kind of one-offs that could happen, so they really would like to avoid that, but they're not threatening anybody. They're not they're just trying to do right by the players, by the business. And really great, well said article, again, very thoughtful, very well framed, gets the message across and explains that they're not the proxy police or anything like that. So very good. Check this out again. Another good article to take a look at. So I think this kind of is blown over, but again, does kind of raise questions in my mind about the Wizards Play Network and just, I don't know how that feels. I just feel like stores should have a more equal billing when it comes to being able to buy pre-release kits or buy from the vault product or whatever. I don't know. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments on that one. So now that blew over, kind of one other small kind of side story, and this isn't a major one, but I just want to throw it out there because again, it involves poor Trick Jarrett, and here's another example. I think this poor guy is just caught in the middle. Now, as a community manager, yes, he does have to, I think, do a little better job of framing this information, making it a little softer, putting a good spin on it, much like we've seen from the previous articles from the Wizards Othership, but at the same time, I feel for him. He's probably got the worst job at Wizards. He's just stuck in the middle. He's trying to go to people to get these answers. They're giving him these very cut and dry legal answers, and he's trying to explain it to the community. He's got to work on that skill a little bit, but he's trying. So I feel for the guy. I really do. Here's just kind of this awkward sort of situation that came up on Reddit where he had asked Reddit to pull down any Flair of the mana symbols. For those of you who don't use Reddit, basically what Flair is, it's what I'm pointing at right there, the Wizards of the Coast little JPEG there. You can put little pictures next to your name, and they call it Flair. So it can be all different things, but on the Wizards page, obviously, it was things like the mana symbols and Wizards of the Coast and the guild symbols and stuff like that. So I was told that they had to remove the the mana symbols from their Flair, and he thought that he could get special permission, so he kind of said, hey, he's going to do that, and then had to come back and say that he wasn't authorized to give that permission, and he couldn't get it approved, and he apologized. So, I mean, the community kind of lit into the whole situation, I mean, kind of in a comical way, that this wasn't a huge deal, but it was just another example of this poor guy kind of having an issue with communication, and also, another example of Wizards, really cracking down on their intellectual property. I will say this, and I said in a previous video, they have every right to do so, and they need to. It's important as a business. You can't lose your intellectual property. You can't. That's everything to your business, especially to a game like this. You need to be able to control cards, card production, your symbols, your characters, to the best of your ability. And look at big companies like Disney. I mean, they're very ruthless when it comes to people using their characters and likenesses of their properties, and they have to be. It's important, so I get it. I totally understand it. This isn't a huge deal in the scheme of things. It really isn't. But I just want to throw that out there so you guys can see it. And again, I'll leave a link if you want to read the whole thread and some of the comments and stuff. Last thing I want to talk about, another controversial topic, is the banned and restricted list that came out a couple days ago. I did a video announcing what was banned and restricted, and a very short video, just kind of said these are the cards. I did throw in a little commentary about Splinter Twin, but today I want to talk a little bit about Splinter Twin and just really about this banning, and was it thoughtful, and was it good, was it bad? And here's kind of my thoughts on it. Wizards, wow. This one's tough, because the Pro Tour is coming up. It's going to be modern based. They're going to want this to be good television. They're going to want people to watch it, be excited to watch it. And they kind of figured that they had to ban a couple cards to make it more exciting, I think. That's my theory as to why they did this. I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me on the surface. Summer Bloom was banned because it was part of the Amulet deck, which is very one-sided. It's very non-interactive. It's a little slow at times. Might not always be the most interesting television. Now, I'll be honest, I like watching combo decks. Personally, I don't mind. I know there's some people that do, but there's a lot of people that don't like watching that. I like most of them, other than maybe Eggs. Eggs was miserable to watch. But I didn't mind Amulet, but a lot of people do, and this banning, I think, was not unexpected. I think kind of makes sense for what they're doing. Splinter Twin. Ouch. Here's my issue with Splinter Twin. A few issues with it, actually. First off, it's been around since the beginning of Modern. There was a time where it really was dominant, and I thought it was going to be banned. But since then, other cards have come into play. There's been a lot of strategies against Twin. I don't feel like it's this powerhouse taking over the format, nor do I think it's not interesting or interactive. I think it's a very interactive deck. The only thing is, it is a little stale because we've seen so much of it over the years that maybe the theory is it would be better TV if that deck wasn't there and we could watch some other decks. But here's the disconnect with that line of thinking and what goes on in the community. Modern cards are incredibly expensive now. They're just shooting up. If you saw the last Market Watch video, it's insane. They're shooting up, and players are putting lots of time and money into building these decks. And when you come up with a product like Modern Masters 2015 a few months ago, and you put Splinter Twin in it, whether you intend this or not, you're sending the message that Splinter Twin is going to be a deck in Modern. So here they are. Hopefully you can get your Splinter Twins. So people take that as a green light to build that deck and to invest in that deck. And you can invest a lot of money in these decks, especially if you put this together recently. You're looking at probably $1,000, $1,500 maybe for some builds, just because Scalding Tarns are so high and stuff like that. But these decks are very expensive. So I go ahead, I put this deck together, and then boom, Splinter Twins banned. Now, is it the end of the world? Can I not use any of the other cards? Well, of course not. I could maybe try to turn this into a Delver deck, but is that going to be competitive in the current metagame? I don't know. Probably not, but who knows, right? I guess we'll see. Yeah, it's very painful, and it's enough to knock people out of Modern, which is sad because it's growing, and it's enough to even maybe knock people out of Magic altogether. It's just a big feel bad. It's kind of a big disappointment. And I think people would accept it more like Summer Bloom if it felt like, okay, I kind of see why they did it. But this one, it just feels like the only reason I can think of, and maybe I'm wrong, is because it's just going to make it a little more fun to watch and maybe diversify the field, but I don't know if it will. It might diversify the field. It could very well. I mean, we'll find out soon enough. It's also possible that Splinter Twin was keeping another huge powerhouse deck in check, like Affinity or something, say, and now next week or 2 weeks from now we're going to see the Affinity Modern Pro Tour, and that's just an example off the top of my head, but maybe it's holding back some of these other decks, and making the format a little slower by taking some twin out might make some of these other decks broken. So it remains to be seen. This is all speculation. We'll know more in a few weeks, obviously, as we start seeing some of these tournaments play out. But the bottom line, and the real problem is the expense of Modern is just so big that it almost ties Wizards' hand to the point where they try to ban a card to make the format a little more interesting, and they get so much backlash and so painful to the players that they lose players. They lose Modern players. And the bigger problem is the expense and the price. And Wizards is in this weird spot because they're walking this line where they have to make decisions all the time. And they're trying to do things that are right by the player, and they're trying to do things that are right by the other stores and the big businesses, your Star City Games, your Channel Fireball. They don't want to hurt their businesses, because for Magic to thrive, those businesses need to thrive. For Magic to thrive, the players need to thrive. So sometimes you're forced to make an awkward decision where you have to kind of lean towards one or the other. Now, printing a lot of Modern staples in high quantities would be awesome for the players and would bring the prices down. But doing so would hurt the secondary market, which would hurt your Star City Games, your Channel Fireballs. So they don't want to commit and go all in on that either. And that's hard, because at some point something's kind of got to give. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't think it's an easy answer, but I do know that Modern prices are insane. They are nuts right now, and they're just skyrocketing. Even quote-unquote budget decks like your Eldrazi ramp deck, which actually was pretty cheap to put together and jump into Modern a few weeks ago, that's just like quadrupled in price probably since it started, and now it's not as expensive as some decks to put together, but I wouldn't call it a budget deck anymore, that's for sure. It can still run you quite a bit of money to try to make that build. So to be continued, I guess. We're going to see what happens with this, but it would just, for the players anyway, it would really be nice if there was a way to print some of these cards in products that are widespread products, like the type of products you see in big box stores, and just get more copies out there for players so they can jump into this really awesome format and not feel so burned if a card gets banned and they just get totally financially kind of devastated. Can you take those cards and build something else? Sure. Can you sell those cards and buy other ones? Sure. But you built that deck because you wanted to play Splinter Twin, like that. I wanted to play Splinter Twin. That seems like a fun deck to me, so I wanted to play it, and now I can't anymore. So it's rough. And like I said, I don't have the answer. It's not an easy answer by any means, but I just really feel bad for the players that invested their time and money in that deck to have this happen. It's just a feel bad all around, and it really sucks. And I hope those players don't leave the game and stick it out, or maybe try a different format or do something different. But it's just kind of sad in that regard. That's the people that were kind of hurt the most by this one. So, all right, well, guess what? This has gone long enough. Like I said, unfortunately, I don't have time for Q&A this week, but I'm going to try to get it in next week if there's not a ton of stories. Until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.